So this week you are doing the ancient and biblical world, right? Yeah. So let's talk about that for a moment. I guess maybe we talked some about this last week, didn't we? So, yeah, well, all right, we'll move to the next one. The one that's due the week after, which is going to be, where's our list? Costume dramas, okay. All right, let's take a look at costume dramas. Now, interestingly, we got a couple of people doing their books on these. Taylor, you're doing The Name of the Rose. What can you tell us about that experience for you? Yeah? Who's in the movie? Tell us that. Sean Connery. Sean Connery. Yeah, Christian Slater. Those are two main ones. Yeah, I don't remember the other ones. So you got 007 as a monk. What kind of a monk? What's his job? What's he doing in the movie?
Kind of that Sherlock type character.
Sherlock. Oh, that's good. A detective.
Yeah, kind of detective work. Who has dealt with heresy within the church because he was part of a council.
Yeah.
Uh,
The Inquisition, perhaps?
yes, he was part of the
Yes.
Didn't say whoever the person who was on trial was guilty.
Right.
The person was later executed though and had to recant. So he deals with that kind of personal baggage.
So yeah, so he's been interrogating and prosecuting heretics for the Inquisition. But he's really a detective at heart. That's what the movie's about, right? The Name of the Rose. And who is Christian Slater in this? Is he another detective monk?
Pretty much his apprentice.
His apprentice, yeah. So it's Batman and Robin. It's 007 and Robin. All right, and so what do you think are the historical, you think this has got accuracy or has got problems?
I mean, I didn't pick up on a whole lot of stuff. I'm sure there are things that say, oh, that's not accurate, but based off of seeing their, as the credits came around, it had, I think, at least 10 different historical advisors of different sorts.
10 historical advisors.
I think it's pretty indicative that they're trying to create a historical piece. The location, the author of the book, which was based off of, went around Italy and looked at different monasteries to use as these locations.
Like setting.
Yeah.
Umberto Eco. He's the author, right? Yeah, this book came out, oh boy, probably in like the early 80s. 82, 83, somewhere in there. I remember that my first awareness of it was in 1984 when I was just still in my mother's womb. I wasn't even born yet. No, I was on an excavation and my roommate was reading that book. And when I asked him about it, he was not forthcoming with anything. So it was just the kind of guy he is. He is teaching college in Nebraska. Been there for many years. But he was one of my roommates. I had 3 roommates that summer. And he was reading The Name of the Rose. And so, I never read the book, but then the film came out, and that was like, what, 88, 89? It was like 5 or 6 years later. Do you know? Was it 86? Okay. So a couple years later, and so I definitely wanted to go see the film because I was intrigued by, just the book. And of course, I didn't get to read the book. I haven't read the book, but I was intrigued by it, and I wanted to to see what it was like. And so I thought it was pretty well done. One of the things I remember about it is it gives a kind of window into monastic life of the medieval period. Because this guy who is his apprentice, Christian Slater, right? Do you remember his, how he came to be his apprentice? They got a little bit of that in the story, don't they? Maybe not. Yeah. Well, often what would happen in these monasteries like this, in order to get, they didn't have things like orphanages, right? In medieval times, like today we do. If there would be some child that was left without any parents or any close relatives, and we have orphanages that have been set up by churches or even the government or whatever, where these children would be taken to be raised. That did not exist really that much in the medieval period. Didn't have that kind of thing. But the monasteries and the nunneries functioned in that way. And so a child, if a family was too poor to really feed their child, or they were really struggling, often they would bring their child to the orphanage or to the monastery, sort of function like an orphanage. Will you raise my child? It was also a way for the child to get some education. Because remember, there's not really, certainly no public education. There's not a lot of ways, especially if someone is poor, for their child to have an education. So there's a couple of reasons why you might have these younger sort of monk apprentices. They're not really monks. Is they may come as orphans, or they may come because the family has sort of arranged for this to happen. Okay? They see it perhaps as a way for the child to get some education, perhaps as a way to alleviate some of the expense that the family can't really afford. And so I think that's who the Christian Slater character is. He's someone who's not a monk yet, because what would happen is these children, and this is really how they recruited a lot of their monks, was one avenue, was through this kind of orphanage or apprentice sort of ways. And then once they reached the age of, say, 18 or 20, they had to decide if they were going to stay. They'd have to decide if they were going to stay in the monastery, if they were going to accept that life. By that time, they certainly knew what the life was, right? Because they've probably been living there for 10 years, 8 years, 6 years. They kind of know what the daily routine is. They kind of know what's expected. Is this something you want to do? If they don't, then they would have to leave. So what other themes did you find in that movie? Were there particular themes or critiques you saw in it?
Well, I did like that they said it was in a historical controversy within two different camps. I think it was the Dominicans and
Okay.
someone else. I don't remember who it was.
Was it Jesuits or
Maybe Franciscans.
Franciscans? Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's right. I forgot about that. That is another one of the things that you might just think monasteries are monasteries are monasteries, and all the monks get along with each other. All the monks agree because they're all monks, right? They're already Roman Catholic and are already monks. What would they have not to agree on? Well, it turns out could be quite a bit. I don't know if it'd be Franciscans, because the Franciscans are a mendicant order. Mendicants didn't have monastic houses. They didn't have, mendicants, you know what the word mendicant comes from? It comes from the Latin word which means to beg. Mendere, I think is the word. It means to beg. It means they didn't have any money. They didn't have any house. They would just wander. They would travel from place to place, and basically they would ask people for food. They're kind of like homeless monks, if you will. And so because of that, they became very controversial. The Franciscans could be. Why? Because some people took advantage of that situation. some of the monks. Some of the monks who didn't really want to do any work. You know, a lot of monks had to do a lot of work, had a strict schedule, had to get up at, I don't know if you've studied it at all, but they have all these different prayer times. 6, 7 times a day they've got to go to prayer, they got to work, they got to do these things. Sometimes they got to be silent. There's all sorts of things they have to do and live in community. But these Franciscans, you know, they're kind of like the hippies of their day, if you want to think of it that way. They were just, you know, they didn't really answer. They didn't have an abbot. You know, the abbot was the guy that ran the monastery. They didn't really have anybody directly over them. They're just kind of wandering from town to town. They're wearing the robes and they're asking people for money. And also some of them became, they were accused anyway of certain excesses. I speak in parables now. But certain excesses, sometimes with drink, sometimes with food, sometimes with the ladies. They sometimes got a reputation as being, this guy's just traveling through town and he's meeting, you know, the young ladies, and then he moves on to the next town. Okay? So kind of a monkish playboy, if you will. And so you see them, like for example, in the movie, you know, in the book of Robin Hood, you know, Friar Tuck character, you know who I'm talking about? He is a Franciscan, so he just kind of wanders around. So they sort of give him a hard time because he's always drinking the alcohol and he's kind of lazy and all. This was the idea. This was a stereotypical idea sometimes of them. You know, Dominicans were much more. Maybe it was Benedictines. I'm thinking it was Benedictine monks. So they were pretty strict. Well, anyway, yeah, so that's another good thing. So you can get some religious sort of medieval history, but also the aspect of the monastic life and history.
I didn't like that they threw in very weird sex scene. I felt like it, I don't know, was unnecessary for the movie, because the rest of it was a completely different movie, and then they just have fit that in there, which I don't know what the purpose of.
Well, want to sell tickets, I guess. Get that rating. Well, yeah, I mean, it's also sort of showing that the other thing, I think, you know, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but it shows the fact that a lot of these monks really were not educated. We tend to think that all the monks were well educated and all that kind of. There were a lot of guys in that monastery that were not. And in fact, I think that's true. And this is why there came monastic reforms. Quite often there were monastic reforms because these monasteries would start off, you know, reform, we're going to do everything right, we're going to do it all like this. And then what would happen is that the monasteries actually became rather wealthy because they had this land donated. They had some way they were making money, whether it was baking bread, making beer, or, you know, wine, or whatever it was they were doing and selling it. They actually became wealthy. Once they became wealthy, then these monastic houses became more corrupt. And in fact, there were several monks that did not really perform any religious duties, or very few, and could not really read or say the liturgy or anything like that. They didn't really, their Latin, even their Latin, they didn't really know Latin, which of course was one of the first things they would need to know. And so then there would be a reform and say, look, we got to shape this up. And so then they would say, well, people who are serious, come over here. And they would join this different monastic order, and everybody would be educated, everything's very good and so forth. But then the next thing you know, they became profitable. So there was a kind of a cycle of monastic reforms that took place several times. So I think the book sort of, and the movie sort of cover that. And I think perhaps this lady of which you speak was to emphasize the fact that not all the monks were doing what you would think monks would do, and not all the monks were not doing things you would think they would not do.
I understand including some sense of temptation for the character, the main character, to develop, but going how far they did, I didn't think was necessary.
Okay. Well, it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I don't really remember those details, and it's probably for the best. Yeah, well, yeah. Hooray for Hollywood. Okay. Let's move to another one, shall we? Ooh, Kingdom of Heaven. What can you tell us about Kingdom of Heaven?
Well,
If anything, can you tell us about it?
I can tell you it is on one of the Crusades.
Yes.
It stars Orlando Bloom,
Orlando.
and I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it yet? Okay. Well, it's been a while since I've seen it, but yes, Orlando is the main guy. There's no Johnny Depp in this one. It's set, it's actually has, they say the castle, and this is the thing that I remember about it most, because it's the thing that made me the most upset with the whole thing from the very beginning. Although I have seen the movie 2 or 3 times, and I've used it even for class. I might use it in this crusade class. You know, we might watch parts of it or have people watch it as an assignment or something for that class. We'll see. I have used it that way before. But it purports to be Carrack Castle, you know, a lot of the scenes. And of course, Carrack Castle is the castle I probably know the best, because that's the one I told you about. I lived next to it for like 4 or 5 summers. And, you know, it's in Jordan. And so when they're like riding across, you know, and there's Carrack Castle, you know, and so I'm thinking, that doesn't even look close to Carrack Castle. Of course, they filmed it, I think, in Algeria or Morocco or something. So that was something that bothered me. But yeah, it is set at that time with the kingdom of Jerusalem, the rise of Salah ad-Din, and then finally his taking of Jerusalem, and ultimately, don't want to spoil it for you, the defeat of the Crusaders. But it's one of the things to look out for there, it seemed to me, is that this was, I'm trying to remember which year this came out. I think it came out like 2002, 2000, early 2000s, I'm thinking.
It was 2005.
2005, okay. And it was very much a kind of an apologetic, at least as I saw it. Maybe I shouldn't say, because you haven't watched it yet. You got to write your thing. But well, just look for potential. I'm not going to say anymore, but look for potential perspective of the movie. What is the perspective of the movie, and what other perspectives there might be? That's all I'll say about it at this point, I guess, because I don't want to pollute your thinking.
You said it was apologetic, so then they try to portray the Crusades as a good thing.
Well, no, I didn't say that.
You use the word apologetic.
Well, apologetic just means a defensive position. It actually means that you defend yourself or a position.
You're currently being apologetic on apology.
Yeah, we tend to use apologetic that you're apologizing, like you're sorry for the position, but actually the word means to defend your position. I'm not really defending my position. I think I would describe myself as being evasive. If I was forced to describe what I'm doing here. All right. Brian, what about Belle? I assume this is a Disney movie about one of the princesses. Don't they have a princess named Belle? There you go. I've never seen it, but that's a great thing. I haven't seen much of the Disney films. You know, I saw the old ones. What I call, like the good ones, the old ones.
That is about a child of a British governor.
Do you say governor? General? Okay, whatever.
Admiral.
Yeah,
One
and
of those military ranks.
admiral. Okay.
And she's like, fighting.
And where is he a governor of or an admiral at? What is it?
England.
He's in England.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And she's fighting to end slavery.
She's fighting slavery
Yes.
in England.
End slavery. Yes.
Okay. I don't know if that's right, but I don't.
I know the general premise is like she's fighting to end slavery. I know that.
She's fighting to end slavery. Well, I think one of the things perhaps is as important is that she is the daughter of the guy. See?
Yeah.
But she is,
Mixed.
yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the main things that's why she is opposed
Yes.
to slavery. But it's also about her her unusual position, I guess I'd say. She is of mixed race, right? But she's living as though she is, wealthy, like a wealthy English daughter. However, like when people show up at the house or something, she has to make herself scarce because, she sort of has one kind of life at home, but another kind of life in public. That's sort of at least I would say, is one of the main things about, yes, it is also anti-slavery kind of film, but at least from a personal level for Belle, it's kind of showing her struggle or whatever, her problem with that situation. Okay? All right, well, we'll leave that for now. Wait a minute. Titanic. If you didn't catch it, that was a real feeble attempt at that scene where he's the king of the world, that kind of thing. What gets me is he's the king of the world in that part of the movie, and then like 9 hours later when the movie's about over. It is a long movie. I've forgotten how long. It's like
3 hours and 27 minutes.
Okay, 3 hours and 27 minutes. At the end, where she kills him, she pushes him off the thing and says, "No, there's no room for you, Jack." And then he sinks and dies, and she steals the jewelry. And then, later on when the cops are after her, she throws, what is it?
3 hours and 30 minutes.
3 hours and 30 minutes.
It's exactly how long it took the Titanic to sink.
Oh wow.
Well,
That's why James Cameron made it. Supposedly, that's why James Cameron
yeah.
made it. We don't know the exact time. That's what it was with August. That's
Well, just remember, it was unsinkable. Anyway,
You know what? Let's talk about conspiracy theories.
Titanic is my favorite.
what's that? Yeah.
He's kind of like putting a curse. You think he jinxing me?
Who's jinxing you?
You.
Me?
You haven't called me the Titanic.
I didn't call you the Titanic.
No, I think because when we were talking about never getting the flu, you said the Titanic was never meant to sink.
Yeah, I'm just drawing a comparison.
No, that's coronavirus.
That you say, oh, I don't have to worry about ever getting the flu. I'm just saying, well, those guys on the Titanic said they never had to worry about it sinking. I was just drawing a little parallel. It's not a curse. I can't do that kind of thing. I don't want to do that kind of. I'm sure you're going to be fine.
Oh no, fine.
You'll be fine.
There's 98% chance that you'll be fine.
Yeah, but that other two. Anyway. Tell us about the Titanic. Did you watch the Titanic? The 3 hours and 30 minutes?
Yeah, I didn't rewatch it because I just want to see it from a different perspective.
Yeah, that's good.
Entertainment.
That's good. Yeah, entertainment. See, I wasn't really entertained by it the first time, but I have watched it a couple of times. I guess parts of it were kind of entertaining. It just really bugged me. The whole thing bugged me. Hard to get past being bugged by it. Now, that was a movie from the 90s. I'm trying to remember, like 95, 96, somewhere in there. Maybe 97. Check it out. Somebody will Google it. I think it was probably 96. I'm just guessing now, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
97.
97, okay. All right. Well, yeah, James Cameron, the Titanic. You know, people love the Titanic.
You know, it's such a
Long before the movie was popular. I mean, the whole thing is popular. Now they're rebuilding the Titanic. It's going to take the original route, so it's going to end up in the bottom of the Atlantic, North Atlantic. And you're going to pay a lot of money to take that ride.
we love this is nice sad story.
It's a nice, sad story.
It's a nice sad story.
It's a nice, sad story.
We love that.
We love the tragedy.
Yeah, people love tragedies.
Okay, people do. Well, people do love tragedies, unless when they happen to them, they usually don't love them as much. Okay, they love tragedies that happen to other people.
There we go. Makes for great.
Kind of like on the interstate when there's an accident. Everybody slows down to watch.
That very,
So nosy.
Yeah. I didn't know what we were talking about.
You don't slow down to look.
No, why would I slow down?
There's
Okay.
a whole traffic jam because everyone slows down for
Yeah.
accidents. Just right.
Or like when people see a cop and they slow down to like
They hit
40
the brake,
miles.
we just, like,
Hey, when I see the cop, I slow down. Yeah, I don't want to be appropriated by Johnny Law. All right, so the Titanic. So things to look for there, I suppose, would be what? We can ask everybody. Yeah, a lot of you know the story of the Titanic. What is the main theme of the story besides the fact that the girl sort of lets him die? That's beside the point. But what about those two, Jack and what's her name? Rose? Is her name Rose?
Jack.
Oh, gotta have Rose first. Okay, Rose and Jack. How do those two crazy kids get together anyway? They're on the ship together.
It's basically sort of Romeo and Juliet on the ship.
Romeo and Juliet. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah. Star-crossed lovers. But yeah, Romeo and Juliet were sort of the same class, but two opposing families.
Right.
But Jack is like, yeah, he's the kind of guy that, she should never be associated. The bad boy, the poor boy, the guy that she would have never normally ever associated with. But since they're stuck on this ship together, this is when it happens. So that's sort of the thing. It's love that's between two people that should not have ever. It wasn't really acceptable for them socially to be together.
Yeah.
How's that? There you go. But yet love brought them together. Love caused her to let him freeze in the water. That's the part that gets to me. He could get up on her. And in fact, if he was up on that...
Grabbed another one. Like there were already people that...
well, no, it would not make a good movie. If he would have gotten up on another one, they would have held hands and been rescued. Nobody would have watched the movie.
Got another tabletop.
I'm sorry. No. My favorite part was when the guys are playing the music all the way down as the ship is sinking. That's my favorite part.
Did that really happen though?
It did, yeah. According to the reports, that's what they did. And I think the reason why I like it reminds me a lot of my own life. That part of it. I just have to keep playing the music as the ship goes down. That's my assignment. Don't question it. This is the song you're playing. Keep playing. Revealing far too much. All right, we did Name of the Rose. We did The Kingdom of Heaven. We did Titanic. We did Belle. All of those we sort of did. Now let's go to The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yeah, tell us about that. Now this is the book.
Yeah, this is the book.
That's a sizable book, as I remember it, isn't it?
I'm at the beginning right now.
Beginning of the book.
Beginning of the book, but I do see some references, some names like King Louis.
Yeah, a lot of historical references.
So I see
And who wrote your book? You remember that? Victor Hugo. Yes, Victor Hugo. Again, that's kind of it's going to be a kind of a kind of love that should have never happened. But there's this attraction between the weirdo and the lovely young lady. I guess I shouldn't use the word weirdo. The hunchback. Can we call him a hunchback? We shouldn't call him that. That's not acceptable. Let's call him differently abled. The differently abled guy of Notre Dame. That sounds like he's a football player now. A football player in a wheelchair. No, that's not it. That would make a good movie, though. You know what I think would make a good movie? Here's the thing I want to make a movie of. Probably go straight to like TV or something. But it would be this. It's about the guy who just like a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you heard of this story, a couple of weeks ago, he's the Zamboni driver. They bring him in as the goalie, and he like becomes a hero. Yeah, the hockey game. He was the two goalies were injured, and he was like the third string. They sort of, well, this kind of guy used to be a goalie, but now he drives the Zamboni around the thing. So they call him in and say, hey, our guys are both injured. You got to come in. And then he like saves several goals. He saves goals from happening, and they win the game. That should be a movie.
So he played and he was on track to go to the NHL and he broke his back. So that's
See, I like that. It even adds to the story. So now he got the risk of breaking his back again. He could have been paralyzed, but he wanted to play the game. That's how much he wanted to
they
play.
won 5-2. It was a good game.
See? They win. I mean, it's great. Everything about it's great. It's like the script writes itself. Doesn't it? Yeah. I'll never make it. How about, let's see, who did Journal of the Plague Year? Yeah? How do you like that one?
I mean,
You like the plague? It kind of reminds you of now.
not really.
It's like the coronavirus thing, no?
Very, very.
No,
very
there's no-
percentage of more people dying.
Okay, a lot more people dying in that one.
But I mean, it was written like by a 5-year-old in a sense. Like it came from the perspective of a 5-year-old.
Okay, I got you.
So, and it was back in 1665. So it was,
Right?
he like was writing in the journal. And then like as he grew up and became more of a writer, then he kind of added back to
Right, okay. Yeah, he was sort of told the story, right?
No,
Wasn't that?
he
He was a little child when it happened.
Right.
He was remembering it, and then he learned other things about it. He kept working on it, though, right? Yeah, that's what I remember about that.
And this like accounts from different people that he had experiences with and different
Okay.
kind of a religious perspective from it, and how like a lot of people like kind of drew away and started believing a lot of.
Well, you know, this is a thing when a lot of death happens from disease, or anyway, but is that it tends to do one of two things. It either draws people closer to God and religion, or it drives them away. Now, most people do have a reaction, though. It's like, let's say with the Black Death in the medieval times. Some people decided, hey, I better straighten up because, I could die at any time and I want to straighten up. Other people say, hey, I could die at any time. I'm just going to live it up. Okay, that's sort of the two extremes. Well, we're about out of time, so we will leave it there for today.